30 years ago, we stood here with this very man who is standing next to me. He stood here to speak, and I held a microphone as he spoke for the very first time. It was here when we received Nelson Mandela and celebrated his release from prison. The 11th of February will forever be remembered as one of those most memorable days in the history of the world, not only in the history of South Africa. Everyone who was aware of what was happening in South Africa tries to remember where they were and what they were doing at the moment when Nelson Mandela was released from prison. Some were young, but today they too try to remember what it felt like at the time, like one Tsepo Makubela, who now works for government. He wrote to me this morning and said, "Good morning, Mr. President. Today marks the 30th anniversary since the release of Madiba, and I remember seeing you at the forefront of Victor Verster prison, leading the way as Mandela took his first steps from freedom. I remember the day," he says, "like it was yesterday. I was a young boy in Soweto, elated knowing that Madiba's freedom meant freedom for all South Africans," close quotes. It was the day that dramatically changed the course of the history of our country. I cannot think of a single day in the history of our country when an event positively changed the course of the country like the release of Nelson Mandela from prison. It was an emotional moment when Utatu Madiba worked out of Victor Verster prison as a free man after 27 lonely and painful years of imprisonment. He walked out of prison a free man into the hearts and the warm arms of the people of South Africa, and was happily received here at this very space where we are at the Marine Parade by the masses of our people here in Cape Town. It was you, the people of the Western Cape and Cape Town, who came out in your thousands as you lined up along the road from Victor Verster to Cape Town to catch a glimpse of this great legendary man who had been hidden in the dungeons of apartheid cells for almost 3 decades. You swelled the streets in front of the City Hall, waving ANC flags, singing and crying with joy, and you were chanting, "The ANC lives, the ANC leads." It was indeed an exhilarating moment. It was a moment when the world literally stood still. People all over the world, they stood still to watch their television screens, and CNN at that time had just really gotten off broadcasting real-time news. They watched as Nelson Mandela with Mama Winnie Mandela walk out of prison, and people all over the world were filled with tears, and it was tears of joy. a day when the whole world focused their eyes on us and our country. There was simply magic in the air. That was the day when we touched the future with our hearts and our hopes. It was a day when we had been yearning for, even as we did not know what the future looked like. All that mattered for all of us was that our freedom had finally arrived. The day Madiba was released was the day we all knew that apartheid was dead and it was finished and clear. The apartheid genie had definitely gone out of the bottle and could not be put back again. And it was you who came from far and wide, men and women, black and white, fathers carrying their children on their shoulders, who were all over here. It was you who gave the most historic welcome to our hero. But it was you, the people of our country, who had ensured that Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. It was through your struggles in the underground. It was through your struggles, through mass mobilization, in your various organizations, your unions, your churches, your sporting bodies, your civic bodies, and many others. It was, yes, through the armed struggle. It was also, yes, through international solidarity, the 4 pillars that Minister Mthethwa spoke about. It was the people of this country who had finally achieved their victory to make sure that indeed Nelson Mandela was released. It was not out of the kindness of F.W. de Klerk's heart. It was not because he felt sorry for Nelson Mandela. It was not because he was a kind-hearted man. It was because of the pressure and the struggles that the people of our country waged to enable Nelson Mandela to be released. It was your victory. It was, yes, on this day, the day when all the people of our country rejoiced and held a massive party. Ons het lekker gepartij hier by hierdie plek. Daar was net baie mense hier, hulle het lekker gedans, hulle het lekker gesing, hulle het lekker geluister as Nelson Mandela addressed us. I'm pleased to see so many young people in this crowd today, and I want to applaud the Nelson Mandela Foundation for having arranged that so many young people should be here. You are the generation born from democracy. You will have grown up with the story of Utata Madiba, learned about him in school, and even seen him on television. Some of you may even have been lucky enough to have met him. I will tell you that on that day 30 years ago, these steps were also full of young South Africans like you. They were all over here, standing together, shoulder to shoulder with Walter Sisulu, Utata Madiba. They wanted to see where their country was going to be taken to.